Hello, everyone. As Adrian said, thanks very much, Adrian, for the kind introduction. There's a lot going on this week, and indeed right now. So if you want to immediately get stuck into hardcore technical discussions or hacking or workshops, then now is a good time to leave this hall, where I'm going to give quite a general talk, and go and explore the wonderful hackerspace across the way there, or go back down to the entrance of Studio 4, as Adrian explained, to the rooms 1 and 2 there for more technical talks, which are starting right now, I believe. I think that's correct. Now, this Web3 Summit, as you've all seen, is going to delve quite deeply into huge range of topics, including many technical ones. And I thought it might be a good way to start the conference, not with anything technical, but to just review the relationship between humans and decentralization over the millennia. And the theme that I want to talk about is organizing humans. It's a very difficult task. Okay, we don't have the answer on it. We're still working out the best ways to organize ourselves. But it's something that humans have always been doing since we've been humans. You know, it's part of what we are, and part of why we've come to a place where we can hold events like this. Humans are social animals, and from the very start, we've somehow been able to organize ourselves to achieve goals and build things. And evolutionary biologists will tell you, I'm sure, that evolution has given us some innate tools to organize ourselves on a peer-to-peer level. So emotions like friendship and trust, or revenge, spite. These emotions drive our interactions, and the emergent effect of that is groupings and organization, cooperation, and occasionally fighting. But these innate behaviors of humans have allowed us to build things, build societies, and develop civilizations. But they only work to a certain point. Beyond a certain number of people working together, we've developed structures that help drive our cooperation, drive our collaboration, and help organize ourselves to achieve certain goals. And we've got a range of organizational structures that we can use, from hierarchies to holacracies. And these involve many different characters, from micromanagers to scrum masters. But still, there isn't a single answer. If you start a new project or you found a new company, there isn't a way to organize that you can say, yes, we know the answer to organizing people, it's this, and implement it. There's a range of ways to approach this organizational task, and it's important that we acknowledge the diversity of people, the range of characters and character traits that we exhibit. Not everyone is the same. People have different motivations. They have different skill sets. They have different things that drive them. And we must acknowledge this. And the systems we use to organize ourselves must, of course, take this into account. We need to be flexible and have ways of organizing that adapt to the situation both within an organization and without it. And in some ways, you can sort of look at human development as, in part, a quest, decentralized quest, happening across space, around the world, and through time, to work out the best ways to organize ourselves. And a range of approaches has emerged. And I like to see them on a scale, going from, the most hardcore, dictatorial, top-down, centralized hierarchies, all the way through to raw, peer-to-peer, decentralized structures. But I'd say that most of the approaches we use fall somewhere between those two extremes. But, as we're all aware of, being here at the Web3 Summit, centralization is something that always seems quite attractive. I'm talking generally now, of humans in general, societies in general. And centralization has the allure of being operationally efficient and easy to understand. And generally we think of some trade-off here where moving towards centralization optimizes on some operational overhead basis, and moving towards decentralization optimizes over some form of robustness, longevity, sustainability. But the context of things actually plays quite a strong role in evaluating whether we should move towards something that is more centralized or more decentralized. The key thing that I want to put forward today is that we need tools. We need the range of tools. We need a tool set that we can draw upon to organize and achieve and deliver. And the more enlightened among our society know that decentralization and designing things to work in a decentralized way is a great tool. Now, it's becoming a bit of a cliche now to use money as an example, but nevertheless, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to draw upon one of the examples from Debt, the First 5,000 Years, which I'm sure a lot of you will have read. And the story here is that, you're the leader of a great civilization in the ancient world. And, being in the ancient world, you're, of course, surrounded by many other civilizations and perhaps other uncivilized groups. And so you need to send out an army. Now, whether this army is sent out for defense or maybe some sort of expansion mission, I'll leave that to you. But nonetheless, there's an army out there, and you need to make sure that it is well supplied, that it has food and the supplies it needs to do its job. And of course, it's quite a logistical challenge to make sure that your army has the resources it needs. And of course, sitting in the center of your civilization, knowing how big your army is at any one time, maybe it's gathered more recruits on its travels, or it's been in some battles and reduced its numbers. Knowing what supplies it needs at any time is going to be a tricky and lengthy task. Information travels slowly in the ancient world. But you could do that. You could get constant reports of how big your army is and send out messages to the corners of your civilization to make sure that the food and supplies are getting there. But this centralized approach isn't actually very efficient in this context. So a cunning way to approach this would be to, ahead of time, set up the system whereby rather than demanding of members of your civilization to contribute to the defense of the realm simply by providing food and supplies directly, say that that support should come through using the payment of some worthless token, some metal coins perhaps. And of course, we all know these contributions as taxes. And then your citizens might say, well, how do we procure these worthless tokens that we will pay to you as taxes? And you say, don't worry. I will give these tokens to our soldiers, to our army. And then you can acquire these tax payment tokens off the soldiers directly when they require food or supplies. And by setting up this peer-to-peer decentralized execution mechanism, you can then send out your army and have to worry a lot less about the way it's organized on the ground. Now, that's just one example. I think commerce in general is a good example of the deployment of a decentralized mechanism. Now, of course, I'm talking about decentralized mechanisms here that are deployed centrally, but nonetheless, they have a decentralized element. If you're running a country, you may ask, how many pubs and bars does this country need? And I would say that the answer to that question is a lot less important than how do we find out how many pubs and bars a country needs. And of course, we could go out and take surveys and work out what, or we could just let markets and entrepreneurs and human endeavor sort all that out. And that seems to work quite well. So what we're doing here is thinking about designing systems with the emergent effects that we want. And the trouble is that in contrast to centralization, emergent effects are a difficult thing to understand, but they can't be escaped. Processes and systems need to be well designed. And you may find Trump quite an unsavory character, but the process that puts him in the White House will be the process that takes him out again. And the fact that America has a system whereby there is an expectation of being a dictator for any more than a set period of time is a good situation, I would say. But of course, there's always dangers of systems having long-term emergent effects that work against themselves. And we're seeing some horrible gerrymandering feedback loops happening which are undermining the democratic structures, not just in America, but in many countries around the world. Because sadly, for those working within a system, it's very easy to focus on the short term, rather than supporting the structure with perhaps short-term results that we don't want, but the long-term emergent effect that we do. I think that one of the best phrases that explains this is when Adam Smith coined the term the invisible hand. And he was, of course, talking about markets, but I think it's fair to say that that phrase is about the importance of deploying good consensus rules. Now, we've come a long way from hunter-gatherer groups applying justice to keep social order based on gut instinct. And it's technology that gives us the tools to work and build the society that we have around us. Technology makes new things possible, and of course this week is a nexus of talking about the next generation of technologies. And I'm particularly excited about new organizational tools that will come out of what we're building. I mean, even Git and GitHub are a fantastic advancement on helping open source collaboration and cooperation to achieve bigger software projects in a decentralized way. But of course, blockchain platforms are also with much promise when it comes to organizing and cooperating in a decentralized way. I kind of see blockchain platforms as having decentralization under the hood. You know, we've got this image of above the water, something graceful and flowing, you know, smart contracts being executed, value being transferred seamlessly and cheaply. But of course, underneath, we've got this peer-to-peer mechanism with proof of work and consensus building that can achieve that. But of course, that can be hidden in the delivery of the tool that can sit on top. The other exciting thing about new technology is when it breaks trade-offs that we've had to previously contend with. And an obvious one is the trade-off between privacy and convenience. So I now have a contactless credit card, which makes my life really convenient. I mean, not so much in Berlin, where cash is still king, but going around being able to just quickly pay for transport and coffees, I mean, it's great. But of course, this comes at the cost of privacy. The credit card company now knows what coffee I like, where I travel, and when I like to do both. And what we can look forward to is blockchain platforms providing a way to have both privacy and convenience. But we often get quite excited when we look to the future of, you know, what the technology that we're building can achieve. And I'd just like to take a moment to, you know, remind ourselves that what we have now is actually really good. You know, we have built a lot, and it's pretty amazing. You know, if I were to choose any time to be made a random human on Earth, then I would choose now. I wouldn't choose 1,000 years ago. Or, but of course, we can still improve on what we have, and that's again what I think this conference is about: building on the success that we've already got for even greater success. Because of course, this is a constant effort to improve society. And having the right tools and maintaining the right attitude is really important. Because as humans, we tend to have a tendency to get complacent. You know, oh, great, the world is now really good, I can relax, and you know, the war is won. But of course, it's never like that. We need to keep cooperating, and cooperating means that we need to constantly compromise, and so we need to make these things as easy as possible to do. And of course, we must also remember that technology is a double-edged sword. I mean, just look at cash. You know, it's made society achieve great things, but of course, there's a lot of activity in black markets or whatever that are the other side of that. So we need to look to build the tools that are used in such a way to encourage good for society. And we can do that through alignment of incentives. And this is something that, you know, becomes more explicit with the tools that we're creating, particularly through blockchain platforms. But we also can look forward to the possibility of truly decentralized reputation systems. You know, 5-star ratings don't work. You know, they just about get away with them in a centralized, curated context, but in a decentralized context, that's not going to fly. So we need a lot of work to get reputation systems going, but they're on the way. And with blockchain and other decentralized technologies, the solutions become possible. But I'm also excited about making more explicit the role of identities that we have as we interact with the rest of society, and the rights that come from those identities, along with the responsibilities too. And getting that link and making it more explicit, I think, is something that might well help. And of course, getting that balance between privacy and transparency. You know, there's not one solution here. If we go all the way to privacy, then it won't work. If we go all the way to full transparency, that won't work either, because we need to acknowledge that there always needs to be some room to account for the fact that no one knows everything about any given situation. So we need that wiggle room. But nonetheless, there's certainly a lot of exciting stuff to come, and the Web3 Summit is, I think, a great place to start talking about this. Thank you very much, and enjoy the conference. Now, my little screen told me that there's 5 minutes until the next talk, until Vlad comes on. So I guess we can use that for a couple of questions, although, of course, like everyone else, I'll be walking to the AMA corner as soon as I leave the stage, so I'll answer any questions there if you want to talk in person. But how are we organizing the audience questions?
Just point at them.
Okay.
Whoever raises their hand can speak.
So if anyone has a question from my very general talk, I'll be very grateful. But so this I think there's a microphone. Here it is. Here it is, coming here.
Hey, that's a microphone. Just wondering if you could say and expand a little bit more about the making explicit the link between identities and rights responsibilities. Just expand on that for a moment or two, if you could.
Yeah, well, this is obviously a huge topic in our space, but all too often I kind of hear it being talked about in a way that makes it seem as if we just have one identity, and this identity will be used for everything. Whereas, you know, when we think about how we interact with society at the moment, we have many identities, and each one gives us different rights. So, for example, I have my passport, and my passport is an identity which allows me to travel, of course, and then maybe open a bank account or satisfy someone else's need for legitimacy of the rights that they want to bestow on me. But I also have a driving license, and that is entirely separate to my passport, and that gives me the right to drive on the roads of certain countries. And you know, for a driving license, the responsibilities are quite obvious because there are lots of laws around what it means to drive on roads. But in many other contexts, that link between what that identity is used for, what rights that you get from having that identity, and what explicit or implicit responsibilities come with exercising those rights, I think very quickly descends into a grey area. And while it's always good to have some grey area, making more explicit those links, I think, would be quite helpful. Yeah. Cool. I was kind of hoping I'd get to have a go at throwing that microphone at people in the audience, but I think we'll leave it there. And if anyone has any questions they want to ask me in person, then you can join me now in the AMA corner. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.